The massive coalition warship Star Crusher hung in the darkness of space like a metallic city. Its commander, Admiral Rex, stood at the bridge's viewport, his four arms crossed behind his back as he stared at the tactical display showing the approaching human fleet. Is this some kind of joke? Rex's secondary mouth twitched in amusement. These can't be their main defense ships. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Pike, double-checked his readings. Confirmed, sir. Those are indeed the human vessels approaching our position. Total count, 15 ships. Rex let out a rumbling laugh that echoed through the bridge. The sound was joined by several other officers who couldn't contain their amusement. Their smallest scout ships were 5 times larger than the biggest human vessel on display. Show me the size comparison again, Rex ordered, watching as the holographic display highlighted the difference. The largest human ship was barely the size of their support vessels. The coalition fleet numbered over 200 massive warships, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash. The reports were correct, Pike said, scrolling through data on his screen. Humans only achieved faster than light travel 2 centuries ago. They're practically infants in space warfare. Rex walked around the tactical display, studying the approaching human formation. And they dared to challenge the coalition. With toys. He shook his head, all 4 eyes blinking in sequence. What do our intelligence reports say about their weapons? Standard chemical propulsion, basic energy shields, and what appears to be primitive laser weaponry, Pike reported. Nothing that could penetrate even our smallest ship's defenses. The bridge crew continued their work, occasionally glancing at the tactical display and sharing knowing looks. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. The coalition had conquered 32 star systems in the last decade alone. Their technology was the result of 50,000 years of development. Send the standard warning, Rex ordered. Give them one chance to surrender and join the coalition peacefully. The communications officer transmitted the message. Minutes ticked by as they waited for a response. The human ships maintained their course, steady and unwavering. Sir, we're receiving a response, the communications officer announced. Text only. Rex waved a hand. Display it. The message appeared on the main screen. The Sol system and Earth are sovereign territory. We will defend our home. Please return to your space. Laughter erupted across the bridge again. Rex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. They have courage, I'll give them that. But courage without power is just suicide. He turned to his second-in-command. Launch our fighter squadrons. Let's show them what real space power looks like. Target their engines first. The coalition can always use more slave labor. The massive hangar bays of the coalition ships began opening, releasing swarms of fighters. Each fighter was nearly the size of the human vessels. The display showed hundreds of them, forming up into attack patterns. Sir, Pike called out suddenly, his voice carrying the note of confusion. I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the human ships. What kind of readings? Rex asked, not particularly concerned. I'm not sure. It's nothing like our database has recorded before. The energy signature is incredibly compact, but the output levels are. Pike trailed off, adjusting his instruments. Rex dismissed the concern with a wave. Probably some malfunction in their primitive reactors. There'll be space debris soon enough. The coalition fighters moved forward in perfect formation, their numbers darkening the space between the 2 fleets. The human ships remained in their position, showing no signs of retreat. Final checks complete, Pike reported. Fighter squadrons ready for attack run. Rex settled into his command chair, ready to watch the brief light show that would follow. These humans would learn their place in the galaxy, just like all the others before them. Begin the attack, he ordered. Let's make this quick. I want to be home for dinner. As the fighters accelerated toward their targets, none of the coalition crew noticed the slight shimmer around the human vessels, or the way their energy signatures were gradually changing. They were too busy celebrating their upcoming victory to pay attention to such small details. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. "Launch fighters," Rex commanded, sealing the human's fate, or so he thought. Admiral James Miller paced in his quarters aboard the Coalition diplomatic vessel. 20 years of living among the aliens had taught him their ways, their pride, and most importantly, their weaknesses. He had to try one last time to warn them. He rushed to the bridge, his diplomatic status granting him access even during battle preparations. The Coalition officers barely acknowledged him. After all, he was just a human. "Admiral Rex," Miller called out, his voice firm despite being half the alien size. "You need to call off this attack." Rex turned slowly, amusement clear in all four eyes. "Ah, our pet human advisor. Come to beg for mercy on behalf of your people." "No," Miller said, stepping up to the tactical display. "I've come to prevent you from making a catastrophic mistake." He pointed to the human ships. "What do you see when you look at these vessels?" "I see primitive toys," Rex replied, drawing chuckles from his crew. "Barely worth the energy it will take to destroy them." Miller shook his head. "What you see is exactly what we want you to see." He turned to address the bridge crew. In human history, there was a battle called Pearl Harbor. A smaller force attacked a larger one, thinking they had the advantage. They didn't know about the aircraft carriers that weren't in port. "Is this a history lesson?" Rex asked, boredom evident in his voice. "We have no time for human stories." "Then how about this?" Miller pulled up historical footage on a nearby screen. The Battle of Agincourt, where a small English army defeated a much larger French force. Or the American Revolution, where colonial farmers beat the world's strongest empire. Pike, the tactical officer, found himself drawn into the conversation. "But those were primitive ground battles. This is space warfare." "The principle remains the same," Miller insisted. "Humans specialize in asymmetric warfare. We've spent our entire history fighting against superior forces and winning." He pointed to the energy readings. "Those signatures you're detecting, they're not malfunctions." Rex's secondary mouth twitched in irritation. "Enough. You've lived among us too long, Miller. You've forgotten that we are the Coalition. We have conquered thousands of worlds. Your primitive species cannot hope to." "That's exactly what the British said," Miller interrupted. "What Napoleon said. What every overconfident military leader in human history has said before their defeat." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Miller could see a flicker of doubt in some of the junior officers' eyes. "Let me show you something else," Miller said, pulling up more historical data. "Human technological advancement isn't linear. We went from first flight to landing on our moon in just 66 years. From basic computers to artificial intelligence in less than a century." He gestured to the human ships. "Those vessels, they're not what you think they are. The size of a ship doesn't determine its power, just like the size of a computer doesn't determine its processing capability." Rex's patience was wearing thin. "Remove him from my bridge," he ordered. 2 guards moved to escort Miller out. "You're making a mistake," Miller called as they dragged him away. "Humans don't think like you do. We don't build bigger, we build smarter." As the doors closed behind him, Miller could only hope some of his words had gotten through. He knew what was coming. He had tried to warn them about humanity's greatest advantage, the ability to make others underestimate them. Back on the bridge, a young officer turned to Rex. "Sir, should we perhaps run more detailed scans before?" Silence. Rex roared. "I will not have my crew infected with human doubts. Launch the attack as planned." As the Coalition fighters approached the human fleet, Pike noticed something odd. The energy signatures from the human ships were changing, growing stronger, more complex. But before he could analyze the readings further, Rex's voice boomed across the bridge. "Record this moment," Rex commanded. "Let all species know the price of defying the Coalition." The massive view screen showed the fighters closing in on their targets. Nobody noticed Miller's sad smile as he watched from his quarters through a secondary feed. The coalition was about to learn why humans had survived so long against superior forces. They were about to learn the hard way. The coalition fighter squadrons streaked through space, their formation perfect after thousands of years of military tradition. On their displays, the small human fleet appeared to be breaking apart, scattering in different directions. "Look at them run," Commander Vex of the lead fighter squadron sneered, "like prey animals before the hunt." The human ships split into even smaller groups, each taking different vectors away from the coalition's main fleet. Their movements seemed panicked, disorganized. Exactly what the coalition expected from a primitive species facing superior forces. On the Star Crusher's bridge, Admiral Rex watched with satisfaction. "Pursue and disable their engines," he ordered. "The coalition can always use more ships, no matter how primitive." The fighters divided into pursuit groups, each chasing a cluster of human vessels. The distance between them closed rapidly. The coalition fighters were faster, more powerful, and far more numerous. "Sir," Pike called from his station, "the human ships are still exhibiting those strange energy readings. They're pulsing now." Rex waved away the concern. "Probably their engines failing under the stress of emergency maneuvers. These humans barely understand space travel." The tactical display showed the human fleet fragmenting further, individual ships now moving in seemingly random patterns. Some appeared to be powering down their engines, drifting helplessly in space. "They're not even trying to fight," someone laughed on the bridge. "This isn't even going to be a battle." Commander Vex's fighter group closed in on their first target, a human ship that appeared to be dead in space. "Beginning capture procedures," he reported. His fighters moved into a standard containment formation around the vessel. That's when the first strange thing happened. "Sir," Vex called, confusion in his voice. "The human ship, it's changing." On the tactical displays, the human vessel's hull appeared to be shifting, panels sliding apart to reveal something. Before anyone could react, the ship's energy signature suddenly multiplied tenfold. "What's happening?" Rex demanded, all four eyes fixed on the display. Similar reports started coming in from other fighter groups. Every human ship they'd surrounded was transforming, their hulls opening like flowers in spring. Pike's instruments were going crazy. "Sir, the energy readings, they're off the scale. Each human ship is generating more power than our entire fighter squadrons combined." "Impossible." Rex slammed a fist on his command chair. "They're primitive. They can't." His words were cut off by multiple flashes on the tactical display. Where there had been 15 human ships, there were now hundreds, no, thousands, of smaller vessels pouring out of the original hulls. "Carrier ships," Pike shouted. "They're carrier ships." But these weren't like any carriers the coalition had ever seen. The vessels emerging from the human ships were tiny, barely large enough for a single pilot. Yet each one was radiating energy levels that shouldn't have been possible for their size. Evasive maneuvers. Vex screamed over the comm, but it was too late. The swarms of human craft moved with impossible speed and precision, darting between the coalition fighters like schools of predatory fish. Their weapons, energy beams no thicker than a finger, sliced through fighter shields as if they weren't there. "Fall back," Rex ordered, watching in horror as his fighter squadrons were torn apart. "Fall back to the main fleet." But the human swarm vessels had positioned themselves perfectly. They had turned the coalition's pursuit into a trap, and now the fighters were caught between the transformed carrier ships and their newly launched squadrons. On his private channel, Admiral Miller's voice came through. "I tried to warn you, Rex. Humans don't build big ships because we don't need to. Why waste resources on size when you can achieve the same power in something a fraction as large?" Rex watched helplessly as his mighty fighter squadrons, the pride of the coalition fleet, were systematically destroyed by ships so small they could barely be seen on the tactical display. And this, he realized with growing dread, was just the beginning. The bridge of the Star Crusher erupted in chaos as officers scrambled to respond to the unprecedented attack. The massive view screen showed thousands of tiny human vessels swarming through space like angry insects, each one moving with impossible precision. "How are they doing this?" Rex roared, watching another squadron of his fighters vanish from the tactical display. "No pilot can move like that." Pike's fingers flew across his console. "Sir, they're not piloted ships, they're drones. Advanced eye-controlled combat drones." The revelation hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The Coalition had always considered AI too unreliable for direct combat control. Yet here were the humans, using it with devastating effectiveness. "Target them with the main fleet's weapons," Rex ordered. "They can't dodge everything." The Coalition warships opened fire, their massive energy cannons lighting up space with deadly beams. But the human drones moved like water, flowing around the attacks with calculated grace. When they couldn't dodge, they sacrificed themselves to protect their companions, showing an efficiency that was terrifyingly inhuman. "Our targeting systems can't track them," the weapons officer shouted in frustration. "They're too small and too fast." A drone swarm approached one of the Coalition's smaller destroyers. Before anyone could react, they had found a weakness in its shield configuration. Precision strikes hit the same spot repeatedly, creating a cascade failure that left the mighty warship dead in space. "Impossible," Rex whispered, watching his fleet's advantages crumble. "Our shields are based on technology perfected over millennia." Miller's voice came through again. "You built your shields to stop capital ship weapons, massive energy beams and torpedoes. But what about thousands of tiny, precise hits? Like a swarm of bees taking down a bear." The human drones demonstrated their superior maneuverability again and again. They slipped through shield gaps that the Coalition didn't even know existed, finding weak points that had never mattered against traditional weapons. "Sir," Pike called out, genuine fear in his voice. "They're not just attacking randomly. They're learning. Each swarm is sharing combat data with the others, adapting their tactics in real time." Rex watched as another of his ships went dark, its shield systematically dismantled by the coordinated drone attacks. His mighty fleet, designed to fight capital ships in grand space battles, was helpless against an enemy they couldn't effectively target. "Launch everything we have," Rex ordered desperately. "All fighters, all support craft. Don't let them get close to the main fleet." But the Coalition's size advantage had become their greatest weakness. The larger ships couldn't protect each other effectively against the small, agile attackers. Every attempt to coordinate defense left gaps that the drones exploited mercilessly. On the tactical display, the human carrier ships had taken up position around the Coalition fleet, their swarms of drones creating a deadly web. Any Coalition ship that tried to retreat would have to run a gauntlet of the lethal machines. "Sir," Pike reported grimly, "we're detecting power spikes from the human carriers. They're launching more drones." Rex slumped in his command chair, watching his magnificent fleet being dismantled by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. The humans hadn't just outsmarted them. They had completely revolutionized space combat. "How many?" he asked quietly. "At least twice as many as the first wave," Pike answered. "And these ones are different, more advanced. They were holding back their best weapons." Miller's voice came through one final time. "This is what humans do, Rex. We look at our limitations and find ways around them. You thought bigger ships meant more power. We decided to make our ships smaller but deadlier. You relied on tradition. We innovated." As the second wave of drones approached, their energy signatures even more potent than the first, Rex finally understood. The Coalition had spent 50,000 years perfecting their way of warfare. The humans had simply invented a new one. Alarms blared throughout the Star Crusher as more Coalition ships reported critical damage. The tactical display, once proudly showing their overwhelming force, now revealed a terrifying reality. They were surrounded by a deadly cloud of human drones. Shields failing on decks 5 through 12. An officer shouted, "The drones are targeting our power distribution nodes." Rex watched in horror as one of his mighty dreadnoughts, a ship that had conquered entire star systems, spun helplessly in space. The human drones had somehow identified its maneuvering thrusters and destroyed them with surgical precision. How did they know? Rex demanded. Those nodes are protected by our most advanced stealth systems. Pike, still analyzing data through the chaos, made another disturbing discovery. Sir, they're using our own shield emissions against us. The drones are detecting micro-fluctuations in our shield grid to locate vulnerable points. The second wave of drones proved even more devastating than the first. These new units carried weapons that seemed to phase directly through coalition shields, as if the protective barriers weren't even there. Impossible technology, the science officer exclaimed. The energy readings suggest quantum tunneling weapons, but that's theoretical. A massive explosion rocked the Star Crusher. On the screen, one of their elite heavy cruisers had just been split in half by a coordinated drone strike. The human machines had hit it from multiple angles simultaneously, their attacks synchronized with microscopic precision. Sir, Pike's voice was shaking. We're detecting something else. The human carriers, they're moving. The original human ships, which had seemed so laughably small at first, began advancing toward the Coalition fleet. Their hulls rippled with energy that defied the Coalition sensors. More drones? Rex asked, dreading the answer. No, sir. Those ships, they're charging weapons. Real weapons. The kind that... Pike swallowed hard. The kind that make our capital ship armament look like toys. The first human carrier fired. A beam no thicker than a human finger lanced out, cutting through 3 coalition ships in succession. The energy reading was beyond anything their sensors could measure. Full retreat, Rex ordered, his pride finally broken. All ships, emergency jump tow. They've blocked our jump points. The navigation officer cut in. Somehow they've created localized gravity distortions. We can't enter hyperspace. Miller's voice echoed through the bridge one last time. We gave you a chance to leave peacefully. Remember that. The human carriers opened fire in earnest now. Each shot was precisely calculated, disabled rather than destroying the coalition ships. It was a demonstration of mercy that somehow felt more humiliating than destruction would have been. Sir, Pike said quietly, I'm receiving reports from all remaining ships. Shield failures, weapon systems offline, engines disabled. We've lost. Rex stood at his command viewport, watching his mighty fleet reduced to floating hulks by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. The human drones continued their patrols, ensuring no coalition ship could escape or reactivate their weapons. Send the surrender signal, Rex ordered, his voice hollow, before they decide to stop being merciful. As the white flag was transmitted, the human carriers regrouped, their swarms of drones forming an escort formation around them. They had won without losing a single carrier, using weapons and technology that would revolutionize warfare across the galaxy. Sir, Pike asked, still monitoring his instruments. There's something else. Behind the moon, energy readings. Massive ones. The tactical display updated, showing what the humans had kept in reserve, their actual battle fleet. Ships that dwarfed even the coalition vessels, held back as a final insurance policy. Rex understood then. They hadn't just been defeated, they had been schooled. The humans had shown them that size meant nothing without innovation, that tradition meant nothing without adaptation. And they had done it all with just their tiny fleet. The once proud coalition fleet hung motionless in space, their mighty ships now powerless under the watchful eyes of human drones. Admiral Rex stood silently as Admiral Miller returned to the Star Crusher's bridge, this time flanked by human marines in powered armor suits barely larger than their bodies. Your warriors, Rex asked bitterly, eyeing the small armored figures. Let me guess, more than meets the eye. Miller nodded. Each suit has enough firepower to level a city, but that's not why I'm here. He gestured to the tactical display. Look behind your fleet. The screen showed new contacts emerging from hyperspace, the rest of the Coalition armada responding to their distress call. Hundreds of fresh warships, nearly 3 times what Rex had brought initially. More ships won't help you, Miller said calmly. You've seen what our drones can do, but we're offering you a choice. The bridge crew watched as the massive human fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon. Unlike the carrier groups that had defeated them, these ships were enormous, true capital ships that matched the Coalition's largest vessels. You held back your main fleet, Rex realized. The drone carriers were just your vanguard. We needed to prove a point, Miller explained. Size isn't everything. But yes, we have traditional warships too. The difference is, ours carry the same technology as our drones. The tactical display showed the full might of humanity's space force. The massive capital ships, the drone carriers, and countless smaller vessels, all protected by swarms of AI-controlled defenders. Here's your choice, Miller continued. You can call in your reinforcements, and we'll be forced to demonstrate our full capabilities. Or, Rex prompted, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Or you can send them a message. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not to be underestimated. That we prefer peace, but we're prepared for war. A new hologram appeared, showing the human drone technology. Not all of it, but enough to make the Coalition understand what they were facing. Your civilization has ruled space through size and strength, Miller said. We ruled our world by constantly adapting, innovating, finding new ways to solve old problems. We're offering to share some of our advances. Rex looked at the tactical display again. The Coalition reinforcements had slowed, waiting for his orders. One word from him would start a war that would reshape the galaxy. You could have built big ships from the start, Rex said, understanding finally dawning. The carriers, the drones, it wasn't just about winning. It was about teaching us a lesson. Miller smiled. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our AI. It's our ability to think differently, to solve problems in ways others don't expect. The bridge fell silent as Rex considered his options. His pride demanded revenge, but his wisdom, earned painfully today, told him something else. Send the message, he ordered finally. Tell them we're standing down, and that we need to reassess our understanding of primitive species. Miller nodded approvingly. A wise choice. The Coalition has much to offer humanity, and we have much to offer you. Size and strength are valuable, but innovation and adaptability even more so. As the Coalition reinforcements received their orders and began to withdraw, Rex turned to Miller. You knew, didn't you? When you tried to warn us, you knew exactly what would happen. I knew humanity would surprise you, Miller replied. We always do. It's kind of our thing. The human Marines began coordinating with Coalition crews to restore power to the disabled ships. Their tiny forms moving through the massive Coalition vessels seemed like a final reminder of the day's lesson. Sometimes the smallest opponents could teach the biggest lessons. 1 month after the Battle of Seoul, the Coalition High Council chamber buzzed with activity. Representatives from 100 species gathered to discuss the unprecedented events that had changed their understanding of warfare and technology. Admiral Rex stood before them, his normally proud stance humbled as he delivered his report. The massive chamber, designed to showcase Coalition power through its sheer size, somehow seemed less impressive now. The humans didn't just defeat us, Rex explained, showing holographic footage of the battle. They revolutionized space combat itself. Our biggest ships were helpless against their smallest drones. The council members watched in stunned silence as the recording showed their mighty fleet being systematically disabled by vessels they could barely see. Many shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing their own assumptions about size and power reflected in Rex's defeated fleet. Admiral Miller stood next to Rex, now officially Earth's first ambassador to the Coalition. We're not here to replace the Coalition, he assured them. We're here to join it. As equals, to share our technology and learn from yours. The High Council leader, an ancient being named Maximus, leaned forward. But how? How did such a young species develop these technologies? Miller activated a new hologram, showing Earth's history of warfare and innovation. Necessity, he explained. When you can't build bigger, you build smarter. When you can't overpower, you outthink. The display showed human battles through history, smaller forces defeating larger ones through strategy and innovation. It ended with their latest achievements: quantum tunneling weapons, AI drone swarms, and miniaturized power systems that defied coalition physics. We had to think differently, Miller continued. The coalition builds mighty ships because you can. We built tiny drones because we had to make every resource count. Different approaches, both valuable. Rex stepped forward again. I recommend immediate acceptance of humanity into the coalition, with full voting rights. Their perspective, we need it. Their technology, we need that too. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some council members argued for caution, others for immediate alliance. But all of them had seen the battle footage. All of them understood what it meant. There's something else, Miller added, activating one final hologram. It showed human ships working alongside coalition vessels, sharing technology and techniques. We've already begun adapting our drone systems to work with your ships. Imagine combining coalition power with human innovation. The image shifted to show a hybrid vessel, coalition size and strength enhanced with human AI and drone technology. It was a glimpse of a future where both approaches complemented each other. Maximus stood, silencing the chamber. A month ago, we thought humans were primitive because their ships were small. Now we understand that true advancement isn't measured in size. He turned to Miller. Humanity made us question everything we thought we knew about warfare, about technology, about progress itself. And then, instead of destroying us, you offered to share your knowledge. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would join the coalition, bringing their unique perspective and revolutionary technology with them. The age of judging civilization by the size of their ships was over. As the chamber cleared, Rex turned to Miller. You know, there's still one thing I don't understand. Why show us mercy? You could have destroyed us. Miller smiled. Because that's another human trait. We know that sometimes the strongest victory isn't destroying an enemy, but turning them into a friend. Above Earth, coalition ships now trained alongside human vessels, learning to work with drone swarms and AI systems. The massive warships no longer looked down on their smaller allies. They had learned their lesson. Never again would the coalition mock a fleet for being tiny, especially if it was human. The end.